In the summer of 1683, the fate of Europe hung by a thread. A colossal army, over 100,000 strong, stood before the gates of Vienna. This was the Ottoman Empire at its peak, led by the Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, and they were here to conquer the heart of the Holy Roman Empire. The fall of Vienna would mean the fall of Christian Europe. Inside the city walls, a mere 15,000 soldiers and a legion of citizen militia braced for the inevitable. Their commander, Count Ernst Rudiger von Starhemberg, knew the odds were impossible. But surrender was not an option. This wasn't the first time the Ottomans had knocked on Vienna's door. Back in 1529, Suleiman the Magnificent had tried and failed. But this time was different. The Ottoman army was larger, better equipped, and more determined than ever. They brought with them an army of miners, specialists in a terrifying form of warfare, sapping. Day and night, the Viennese could hear the faint, chilling sound of digging beneath their feet. The plan was simple and brutal: tunnel under the city walls, plant massive amounts of gunpowder, and blow the fortifications to kingdom come. For 2 long, grueling months, Vienna held on. The defenders fought with desperate courage. Starhemberg was a rock, a commander who led from the front, inspiring his men even as their numbers dwindled. But the city was starving, supplies ran out, ammunition was low. Cats, dogs, and rats became a source of food. Disease ran rampant. The constant Ottoman artillery bombardment turned parts of the city to rubble, and the underground explosions brought down bastion after bastion. The defenders would plug one hole, only for another to be blown open. It was a race against time, a nightmare of endless fighting and gnawing hunger. The Viennese sent out messengers, one after another, pleading for help, but most were captured and killed. The city was isolated, alone, and on the brink of collapse. Kara Mustafa was so confident of victory that he had already chosen which church would become his personal mosque. He could taste it, but help was coming. Across the fractured lands of Europe, a call to arms had been answered. The plea from the Holy Roman Emperor, Leopold I, had reached the unlikeliest of heroes, John III Sobieski, the King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania. Why was he an unlikely hero? Because Poland and the Habsburg Empire were traditional rivals. There was no love lost between them, yet Sobieski, a deeply religious man and a brilliant military commander, saw the bigger picture. This wasn't just about saving the Habsburgs. It was about defending Christendom itself. He honored a treaty and assembled a relief army, a coalition of Polish, German, and Austrian forces. In early September, Sobieski's army reached the Vienna woods, the hills overlooking the city and the vast Ottoman camp. From their vantage point, they could see the sheer scale of the enemy forces. It was an intimidating sight, but they also saw something else. The Ottoman army was completely focused on the city. Their rear was exposed, their camp sprawling and disorganized. Kara Mustafa, blinded by his arrogance, had made a fatal mistake. He had failed to properly secure his rear flank, dismissing the threat of a relief force. He didn't believe they could assemble and march so quickly. The morning of September 12th dawned. From the heights of the Kahlenberg, a cannon fired, signaling the start of the battle. The Allied forces began their descent, fighting their way down the wooded slopes, pushing back the Ottoman detachments sent to stop them. The fighting was fierce all day, a bloody struggle across the terrain leading to the Ottoman camp. The Ottomans fought hard, but they were now caught in a two-front war, trying to take the city while fending off a massive army at their back. It was a commander's worst nightmare. As the sun began to set, the moment of legend arrived. John Sobieski, at the head of the Polish Winged Hussars, prepared for the final, decisive blow. The Winged Hussars were the elite of the elite, heavy cavalry famous for the massive wings of feathers worn on their backs, which made a terrifying, howling sound as they charged. Around 6 p.m., Sobieski gave the order. 18,000 cavalrymen, a combined force of Polish Hussars and German-Austrian horsemen, thundered down the hills. It was the largest cavalry charge in the history of warfare. Imagine the scene: a wave of steel, horses, and feathered wings crashing into the heart of the Ottoman camp. The sound was deafening: the thunder of hooves, the shrieking of the Hussar wings, the clash of sabers. The shock was total. The Ottoman lines, already stretched thin and exhausted from a full day of fighting, simply broke. Panic spread like wildfire. Soldiers who had been on the verge of conquering Vienna just hours before now threw down their weapons and fled for their lives. The charge swept through the camp, a torrent of destruction aimed directly at the red tent of the Grand Vizier himself. Kara Mustafa tried to rally his men, but it was useless. The battle was lost. He grabbed the sacred banner of the Prophet and fled, abandoning his army, his camp, and his dreams of conquest. The siege was broken. Vienna was saved. The victorious soldiers entered a city that was more a graveyard than a home. But it was a city that had not fallen. They found the Ottoman camp filled with unimaginable riches, treasures, coffee, and supplies. This introduction of coffee to the city, by the way, is how Vienna's famous coffeehouse culture began. The aftermath was world-changing. The defeat at Vienna marked the beginning of the end for Ottoman expansion in Europe. It shattered the myth of Ottoman invincibility and started a rollback that would last for centuries. Kara Mustafa paid for his failure with his life. On his return to Belgrade, he was executed on the Sultan's orders. John Sobieski, on the other hand, was hailed as the savior of Western civilization. He famously paraphrased Julius Caesar, writing to the Pope, Veni, Vidi, Deus Visit, I came, I saw, God conquered. The Siege of Vienna in 1683 is more than just a battle. It's a story of incredible endurance, of desperate courage against impossible odds. It's a story of how old rivals can unite against a common threat. And it's the story of one of the most dramatic turning points in history, decided by the thunderous charge of the Winged Hussars on a September evening. It reminds us that sometimes history isn't made by slow, grinding change, but in a single, earth-shattering moment. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories that shaped our world. See you next time.